Hello everyone, myself Seema Tambe, and today's topic which I'm going to discuss is redox reaction. Okay, now let's just see what do you mean by redox reaction. Okay, so redox reaction goes by name. Okay, see, red means what? Reduction. And OX means what? Oxidation. Okay, what I said, what is redox reaction? So the reaction which involves reduction and oxidation. Okay, so what basically redox reaction is? The reaction wherein oxidation and reduction takes place simultaneously. Okay, so what is redox reaction? The reaction wherein oxidation and reduction takes place simultaneously. Okay, so it's a reaction, okay, wherein reduction and oxidation will take place simultaneously. What is simultaneously, guys? Simultaneously is basically at the same time. Okay, so a reaction, whenever it involves reduction and oxidation, that particular reaction is called as what? Redox reaction. If in the reaction there is oxidation, for example, and no reduction, okay, and or if in another example, if there is reduction and no oxidation, that means that reaction is not to be, or that reaction will not be called as what? Redox reaction. Okay, so there has to be oxidation and reduction simultaneously, then only it is going to be called as redox reaction. Okay, we'll see it as again. What is redox reaction? See, it goes by name. It involves reduction as well as oxidation in the name itself. Okay, so the reaction wherein oxidation and reduction takes place simultaneously, means what? At the same time. So here, you know, guys, there are basically three definitions of oxidation and reduction. Okay, so oxidation and reduction in terms of oxygen, oxidation and reduction in terms of hydrogen, oxidation and reduction definition in terms of electrons. Okay, so did you got this redox reaction? Now we are going to see what is redox and oxidation reaction in terms of these three things. What are those three things? We'll see it now. Okay. So there are basically oxidation reductions definition in terms of oxygen, in terms of so there are basically oxidation and reduction definition in terms of oxygen, hydrogen and electrons. What is it? We'll see it now. Okay, so oxidation and reduction. Okay, what is it? Its definition in terms of oxygen. What is it? Basically oxidation and reduction definition in terms of oxygen. So if at all there is a question in your exam, redox reaction or oxidation reduction, this is what you need to, you know, take into consideration. Rest of the example is basically for your information. Okay, so what is oxidation and reduction in terms of oxygen? So okay, I'm talking in terms of oxygen. Okay, so oxidation, what is oxidation? See, oxidation means addition of oxygen. What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen. Okay, and what is reduction? It's removal of oxygen. Okay, oxidation reduction in terms of oxygen. Okay, what is oxidation? Addition of oxygen. What is reduction? Removal of oxygen. Okay, now we'll see oxidation and reduction definition in terms of hydrogen. Okay, now in terms of hydrogen. Okay, what is it? The definition is basically in terms of hydrogen. Now, in terms of hydrogen, what is oxidation? See, in terms of oxygen, what is oxidation? It's addition of oxygen. So, in terms of hydrogen, it is removal of hydrogen. Okay, now reduction, it's what? In terms of oxygen, removal of oxygen. So here it will be what? Addition of hydrogen. So it's basically opposite. Okay, again we'll see what is oxidation and reduction definition in terms of oxygen and in terms of hydrogen. Okay, what is oxidation? Addition of oxygen. What is reduction? Removal of oxygen. Now in terms of hydrogen, oxidation is what? It's removal of hydrogen. Reduction, it's addition of hydrogen. Okay, now we'll see in terms of electrons. Okay, what basically happens when oxidation takes place? What happens when reduction takes place in terms of electron? We'll see it now. In terms of what? In terms of electrons. Oxidation and reduction definition in terms of electrons. Okay, so what happens when oxidation takes place? Oxidation is loss of electron. Okay, oxidation is what? Loss of electrons. Oxidation is what? Loss of electrons. Okay, what is reduction? Gain of electron. Okay, what is oxidation and reduction in terms of electrons? It is oxidation means what? Loss of electron, and reduction is what? Gain of electron. Okay, now we are going to see how redox reaction is taking place, in the reaction. Okay, how in the reaction the oxidation and reduction will take place simultaneously. Okay, that is what our redox reaction is all about. Redox reaction is what? When oxidation and reduction taking place simultaneously. So how it is basically taking place in reaction is what I am going to. So the reaction, just like I said, what we took copper, okay, and we heated it. So this copper was basically what? Brown in color. It reacted with oxygen, that means it heated basically, that means it reacted with oxygen. So it reacts with oxygen and what you get is copper oxide. Okay, now this copper has two valency. This oxygen has two valencies. When there is a same valency, it cancels out. Okay, fine. And I also said you should make sure that your reaction is balanced. So now let's see the balancing part. Oxygen 2, is it oxygen 2 on the right hand side? No, then you need to put here. Again we'll see whether it is balanced. Oxygen 2 balanced, but now copper we need to balance it. Okay, now it is, again we'll see that it is properly balanced. Copper 2, oxygen 2, oxygen. So now it's balanced. Okay, now let's see what basically happens further. Copper is reacted with oxygen and it is forming what? Copper oxide, which is what? black in color. Okay, now what we are doing is we are taking this copper oxide, okay, and we are passing hydrogen gas. Okay, then what you're going to get is copper and water. Okay, now see it carefully. Okay, this is basically solid, gas, solid. Okay, fine. First thing what happens, we took copper, we heated it, that means it reacts with oxygen. Oxygen is by molecular, in molecules form always. Okay, and what you get is copper oxide. As it is same valency, so it will cancel out. Now, then what we did is we basically balanced it. Okay, now what happens, again we passed what, hydrogen gas. So when you are passing hydrogen gas, the reverse reaction takes place. See, copper oxide and hydrogen, whenever you're passing this hydrogen gas, see what happens, this copper is formed again. That means reverse reaction took place and copper is formed again. Okay, so you will get copper here again and H2. Now see carefully how oxidation and reduction is taking place over here. Now see, this copper is losing oxygen. See, copper is losing oxygen. That means copper is losing oxygen. That means reduction is taking place. What? Copper oxide is losing its oxygen and you're getting what? Copper. Okay, so reduction is what? It's removal of oxygen. Okay, so what is reduction? Okay, so what is reduction? See in the reaction, copper oxide. See, copper is losing oxygen, it's wrong. See, what is it? Copper oxide. You should always write copper oxide because copper is not losing oxygen. Copper oxide is losing oxygen and you're getting copper. Okay, so copper oxide is losing oxygen and you're forming what? Copper. That means removal of what? Oxygen. So when there is removal of oxygen, that means what? Reduction. We have seen what? Reduction is what? Removal of oxygen. So copper oxide is undergoing reduction and forming copper. Okay, copper oxide is losing oxygen and forming copper. That means copper oxide is undergoing reduction. Okay, now let's see about hydrogen. Hydrogen is getting water. Sorry, hydrogen is getting oxygen. Okay, hydrogen is getting oxygen. That means oxidation is taking place. What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen. Okay, again we'll see copper oxide is losing oxygen and forming copper. That means copper oxide undergoing reduction. Okay, hydrogen is gaining oxygen. That means oxidation. Okay, now see, copper oxide losing oxygen. That means reduction taking place. So, okay, so copper oxide, okay, is getting reduced. Okay, so copper oxide, what I said, copper oxide is undergoing reduction. That means copper is getting reduced. Hydrogen is getting oxygen. That means oxidation. That means hydrogen is getting oxidized. Okay, fine. So see, here we can see in the reaction very clearly that oxidation as well as reduction is taking place simultaneously. Okay, so the reaction wherein oxidation and reduction is taking place simultaneously is called as what? Redox reaction. Okay, so in a reaction, oxidation, reduction took place simultaneously, right? Hence that reaction is called as what? Redox reaction. Okay, understood? Fine. If you like my video, please do like, share and subscribe. Thank you.